Yes, thank you, Max. Hi, everyone. So my name is Lee, and I'm an international growth consultant based out of Google Korea office. So as part of my role, I help advertisers in Korea to expand into overseas markets with market strategy and consumer insights, and also help foreign businesses to expand and enter Korea as well. So today I'll be presenting insights on the Korea market, and I have to apologize in advance. I came down with a cold, so I might be coughing here and there, but we'll try my best. So today I'll be presenting insights on the Korea market, and I have to apologize in advance. So if we can move on to yes, on that slide. First, I will start off by looking at the macro changes happening in Korea in terms of the economy, the demographics, technology, and culture. And then next, I will mention some challenges in entering Korea. And lastly, spend most time talking about the new opportunity areas due to digital growth, especially in media, apps and gaming, retail, and mobile too. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so to start off, Korea is a very small country with a population size of 50 million. Out of 50 million, 20% of the population live in Seoul, our capital city. So it's a very dense city. Korea has gone through a very rapid growth since the 1970s, as you can see from the chart there. And now it is 11th largest country by GDP size. The trigger for this rapid growth was due to active trade. If you see the chart on the right, 80% of Korea's GDP comes from trade. And this is because Korea has relatively small domestic economy due to its small size. And Korea's export share is 54%, which is the highest compared to the US, Japan, China, and UK. Next slide, please. Another growth driver for Korea were the conglomerates, and we call them the 재벌s in Korea. They're the big name companies like Samsung, LG, Hyundai. Top 5 conglomerates, asset value combined, is equal to 75% of Korea's GDP. Samsung alone is 26%. And these 재벌s were at the front line of our trade and innovation. So there was a good side to it, and they received a lot of preferential treatment from the government, a lot of benefits. And this is the reason why import has not been as active as export in Korea. And as you can see from the trajectory, their dominance is not going to decrease any sooner. Next slide. Another thing I wanted to mention about Korea is that it's undergoing very rapid demographic change. And notably, our birth rate is the lowest among the OECD countries, and hence it will be the fastest aging country than Japan. The reason why is because it's very tough raising a child in Korea, and most modern couples decide to focus on their lives instead. And I say tough because living costs are getting higher. Parents are investing more in kids' education these days, and more women are now working, and yet there are hardly any social support for these working moms, hence the low birth rate. So on the next slide, and this demographic change is resulting in a new consumption trend. We call it SOLO. We're seeing increased spending in leisure activities, and more people are making overseas trips. And we're seeing a lot of young people making trips alone. In convenience stores and markets, food and ingredients come in smaller packages for single-person households. And most Koreans are very active on online shopping, and food and grocery shopping online are becoming the norm these days. And we're seeing overnight delivery services being introduced to cater to these needs. Next slide, please. Another characteristic of Korea is is the technology. And I think it's quite well known that Korea has one of the fastest internet in the world and very high smartphone penetration as well. Wi-Fi access is literally everywhere, even in bus and trains. And the connection is so stable and fast. So you see everyone on their phones either playing games or watching videos or live streaming sports events. And this also means that Koreans have very low patience with lagging web pages and apps. And this is one thing to note if you're servicing in Korea. The loading speed is quite critical. Next slide. Right. So the internet speed and data cost is not an issue here in Korea. So Koreans spend a lot of time on their smartphones. If you look at the chart on the left, the bubble chart, Korea not only has the highest smartphone penetration in APAC, along with Singapore, it also has the highest number of apps installed per user. On average, it's around 53 apps. And Koreans spend on average 200 minutes per day on apps. And that trend is on an increase as well. Next slide, please. So let's talk about Korean culture. Korean culture has been a global phenomenon of late, and this Korean wave is called Hallyu in Korean. It's best known for K-pop, and I think a lot of you guys must be very well aware of Psy, the Gangnam Style song, and has been a big hit globally. And more recently, BTS, which is a very famous K-pop idol group, it has been the first Korean artist to record #1 on Billboard charts. Korean beauty and skincare products are also getting very popular. One example of that is in CVS, which is a drugstore in the US, has a whole section for Korean beauty products. Korean food and dramas are also very popular, especially in the APEC region. And Hallyu is actually used as a very effective marketing means. And because the fans are very loyal and the fan base are actually very global as well. Next slide. So here I wanted to show the impact of Hallyu. So Hallyu produced extra $8 billion worth of export revenue. The chart on the left shows this revenue by vertical. And mind you, it's not the total export volume. This only shows the incremental revenue due to Hallyu. So obviously tourism has big impact, but what's surprising is the game. So game has also been a beneficiary of the Hallyu phenomenon. If you look at the chart on the right, it shows the countries and the consumption change of Hallyu contents in 2016 to 2017. And as you can see, the popularity of Korean culture is especially notable in Brazil and US. Next slide, please. Now, here I'm going to shift gear and talk about some challenges that you might face when you're entering Korea. So the first challenge is on the next slide. Yeah, so the first challenge is that Google is not the predominant search platform in Korea. There are two strong domestic players called Naver and Daum. They are more like search portals, similar to Yahoo. So Naver is the predominant service in Korea, and it is very domestic. It doesn't have any English support. So a lot of foreign businesses entering Korea face marketing as a challenge. But if you look at the next slide, However, Google's search share is slowly growing in Korea, and there are other Google products with high penetration. So YouTube is #1 video portal in Korea. And through YouTube, you can reach over 90% of online viewers. It's becoming the predominant platform, especially for our advertisers to reach not only the younger generation, but also the older generation as well. We're seeing more and more older generation coming onto the YouTube platform. Google Display Network is #2 in Korea, and we have 81% reach. Android is the predominant OS used in Korea, with over 70% of smartphone users on Android device. On the next slide. So another challenge that you would definitely face is the language. So this graph shows the language setting in users' browsers by APEC country. The blue means local language, and orange is English. And as you can see, for Korean is the predominant language here. So it's essential that you translate your service or websites in Korean. If offering everything in Korean is difficult, then at least I would suggest the main page, the Q&A, and the payment pages should be at least provided in Korean. So the last challenge that I would like to talk about is the regulation here. I cannot go over the entire regulation landscape of Korea, but it's pretty harsh because we have a very strong government control here. We have the government agencies doing dawn raids. We call them dawn raids, lacking due processes such as warrants. So it's pretty strict. And one example I would like to share here is the ActiveX control. So ActiveX is a web plugin for Internet Explorer, which you would install when you're visiting banking sites or payment sites. The problem is that the Korean government actually made it mandatory to use ActiveX during identity verification process. And so this meant that all financial transactions needed to happen on the Internet Explorer, which is unfair, and it actually stumped innovation in the startup space. But moreover, ActiveX had numerous security issues, and it's actually a pain for users as well, because whenever they're accessing banking sites or payment web pages, they would need to go through the separate installation process. So recently we're seeing some movements, even from the government, to abolish this regulation altogether. And this probably is one reason why app usage is so much higher in Korea, as no other installation is required for financial transactions when you're on apps. All right, so up until now, I talked about some challenges that you might face in Korea. And from here on end, I would like to spend some time to talk about the opportunity areas, especially with the digital growth. Next slide, please. Yes, so specifically, I'm going to talk about opportunities in media, apps and games, retail, and in mobile O2O, mobile payment, food delivery, and travel booking. All right, next slide. So Korea's total ad market size is 12 billion. And out of which the digital advertising spend takes up 40% of the total ad spend. And it's actually increasing, as you can see from the chart on the left. TV is next at 26%. Outdoor and print are both around 15%. Next slide, please. So on the left here, you can see that Koreans are spending more time on digital than TV. And this trend started happening since 2015. So ad investment has mostly shifted to digital from TV since a few years ago. It's a recent trend we're seeing with our clients as well. They're shifting their TV budget to more digital. And within digital, notably mobile ad spend is over 70% of the total digital spend. So mobile is actually very, very important, as I mentioned up front, that Koreans spend a lot of their times on mobile. Next slide. If we look at Korean TV broadcasters by reach, YouTube actually comes fourth after KBS, MBC, and SBS. These are the three national TV stations. However, if we actually focus on the millennial generation, the 19 to 24-year-olds, YouTube actually has by far the biggest reach compared to these TV broadcasters. So the next slide. So I would like to mention that YouTube is Korea's #1 video platform. It reaches 90% of the entire internet population. And it also is the app with the highest time spent. If you look at the graph on the right, the time spent is actually higher than KakaoTalk. KakaoTalk is Korea's predominant messenger service, and it historically used to be #1 for the longest time, but this trend has shifted. We're seeing more people spending time on YouTube these days. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about apps here. I've included the top app charts in Korea for the past year, right? And 3 categories actually stand out here. So social in red, photo filter apps in blue, and game apps in green. So these 3 are the predominant app categories. It becomes more apparent when you look at the chart on the right that compares the app revenue in Korea versus US. So gaming, photo filter apps, and social are where the biggest revenue opportunity lies in Korea. And especially gaming is very big in Korea. Korea has the 4th largest gaming industry in the world. And what's interesting is that its growth is actually 2 to 4 times faster than in other major countries such as Japan, US, and China. So last year, the YOY growth for Korea was 65% compared to the global average of 26%. So we're seeing this industry grow really fast. So more and more Korean developers are investing in the domestic market in terms of marketing. We're seeing more foreign games entering the Korean market as well because it's becoming very important. Next slide, please. Okay, so here I would like to talk about retail. E-commerce retail is where we have big opportunities in Korea because a lot of Koreans are doing online shopping. We don't have Amazon here in Korea, and the e-commerce industry is rather fragmented with multiple players, and we're seeing a lot of competition in this industry. The big 3 are eBay Korea, which owns Gmarket and Auction. And the second player is 11th Street, and the third player is Coupang. And these are all pure e-commerce players. We also have traditional retailers like Shinsegae and CJ and Lotte that are expanding their share in the online commerce space. There are 3 characteristics, I would say, that stand out for the Korea e-commerce versus the e-commerce players that I see in other countries. First is the low price. As I mentioned before, the competition is really fierce and all the players offer very low price point. Second is quick delivery. Delivery cost is very low in Korea, around $2, and or it could be free if you purchase more than a certain amount, of course. And delivery is really fast as well. And consumers' expectation is to have the delivery next day. At max, I would say average will be 2 to 3 days delivery in Korea. And this is possible because, as I mentioned before, 20% of the population lives in Seoul. We have a very dense, dense cities in Korea. Third is seamless payment. So most major e-commerce players in Korea have their own payment service integrated into the platform. And they would offer additional benefits if users use this payment method. So for instance, 11th Street has Sarah Pay, eBay has Smile Pay, and Coupang has Rocket Pay. So it's a bit of a payment war going on as well. And so these are the three characteristics of the e-commerce players in Korea. Next slide. If you look at e-commerce penetration by vertical, just the bubble chart over here, fashion is by far the biggest vertical. And cosmetics and furniture are rapidly moving into the online space as well. And if you see at the far left, the green bubble there, that's F&B. So F&B obviously is slowest in terms of change, which means that it has more room to grow in the longer term. And I'm going to mention later at this presentation about the digital changes happening within the F&B space as well. The next slide. All right. So this is about mobile O2O, online to offline. As I mentioned before, we have 90% of the population using the internet and similar penetration rate for the smartphone as well. So the online to offline market is growing really fast. It is projected to be $594 billion this year. And as you can see from the bar chart below, it's expanding rapidly. And the traditional offline verticals such as transportation, F&B, and delivery, they're moving very fast into the online space as well. And the pillar that's making this growth possible and accelerating this growth is mobile payment. If you go to the next slide, I'll explain a bit about the mobile payment changes happening in Korea. So it's actually becoming quite predominant in Korea. If you look at the chart on the left, mobile payment now takes up 20% of the total online shopping payment needs. So one thing to note is that Korea has one of the highest credit card penetrations in the world. A Korean will have on average 5 credit cards compared to 2 for an average American. So it's very easy to get a credit card in Korea, and it's widely used. Taxis, small shops, convenience stores, even if you're paying making $1 purchases, you can pay with your credit card. So traditionally has been the predominant payment means. However, as you can see from the chart there, more credit card payers are now moving towards mobile payment. And it seems like they're feeling safer with mobile payment method, as can be seen by the increase in the average payment volume per transaction. So in 2016, it used to be $3 per payment, and now in 2017, we're seeing a big increase to $30. So overall, the mobile payment volume is increasing extremely fast. And this is actually speeding up all the growth in the online space. Next slide, I would like to show you the mobile payment service providers. We have a lot of mobile payment service providers in the market now, over 30, but these are the big 4: Samsung Pay, Kakao Pay, Naver Pay, and Payco. So Samsung Pay has the biggest advantage in offline payments, as majority of Android users in Korea use Samsung device. Kakao Pay is next. It's a payment service integrated into Korea's #1 messenger service, Kakao Talk. So it's operated by Kakao. And because Kakao Talk is actually a messenger used by over 94% of smartphone users in Korea, obviously Kakao Pay has the platform advantage. Naver Pay is operated by Naver. This is integrated into Naver Shopping. So when it started off with a considerable user pool already. Payco is the fourth player, but it's spending very aggressively on marketing and partnerships. So we're seeing increased number of users for this payment service as well. So that was the payment landscape. On the next slide. Okay, so food delivery. I think this is one area where it's quite unique to Korea. Food delivery is an area where mobile O2O shows most noticeable growth in Korea. There are three major delivery apps, and Baemin has the biggest market share at 55%. Food delivery is actually very, very common and super fast in Korea. The reason why it's so popular and why delivery apps are used so widely is because, first of all, we traditionally had a very big offline food delivery market. Anything can be ordered with a phone call, and now all that is just moving into the online space. Social change is another reason. We have more single households now than ever before, and we have a lot of working women now. So obviously less cooking, more food delivery. Improved user experience is another reason. You no longer have to wait on the call. Payment is made automatically, and the menu can be viewed very seamlessly on the app. And lastly, low logistics cost. Again, because most population live in big cities, it's very dense. So logistics is actually pretty low. So all this contributed towards the $4 billion food delivery market in Korea. On the next slide, I just wanted to show you what you can order through these apps. You can order just about anything, even ice creams and sashimi, anything you say, it's available online. And the delivery time is actually pretty fast as well. I would say max it will be 1 hour of waiting time. So it's actually quite fast. Lastly, on the next slide, I would like to talk about travel booking. So outbound travel is growing very fast, showing 15 to 20% YOY growth the past 3 years. As I mentioned, this is in line with the social change as well. We're seeing more and more single household families growing, more and more couples with no kids. And so people are spending more on themselves. And we think that this trend is going to maintain over the future as well. Last year, we had around 27 million outbound travelers. Considering that we have the population size of 50 million, this is quite big. And if you look at the popular outbound destinations there in the chart, in the pie chart, you can see that most outbound destinations are within the APAC region, with the exception of the United States. So people are making very short trips. Japan, Vietnam, Saipan, Thailand, and US, they are the ones that showed most growth momentum. So they're becoming very popular travel destinations for Koreans. As for the travel season, peak season is during December to January when we have winter vacation. And then during January and February, we have Lunar New Year. So the Lunar New Year, the date is not fixed. It's always changing every year, but it falls sometime around January and Feb. It's the Chinese New Year, and we get 3 days off. So a lot of people use this time to travel with their families. July to August is summer vacation season here. And a lot of people actually use this time to travel with families. And September to October, we have our Thanksgiving, which we call Chuseok. We also have 3 days off here, so that's also the peak travel season. Next slide. All right, so I would like to talk about some travel booking related apps in Korea. So if you look on the left, you see the top travel apps by download in the past year. So one trend that is notable is that we're seeing more international players gaining popularity with Koreans, such as Hotels.com, Airbnb, Agoda, and Hotels Combined. And traditional domestic players like Interpark Tour, Hana Tour are slowly losing market share. So if you look at the left, the top apps by download, number one is Skyscanner. And we see all these Airbnb, Hotels.com, Agoda, and Bookings.com, the foreign international businesses doing better in Korea than compared to a few years ago. All right, so I guess, do we have next slide or? Okay, so that's all I had for today. I tried to rush the presentation a bit because I packed quite a lot of topics. So I hope that you are able to find some snippets that you found relevant and useful for your business. So I'll hand it over to you, Max, now.
Thank you very much, Lee, for such an insightful and very, very interesting presentation. I personally think that the Korean culture, Hallyu, produced a $8.2 billion in 2017, which is magnificent. Also, even Naver and Dome are kind of dominating the markets, but Google still has a very strong presence, especially in YouTube, display, and Android as well. Yeah, not to mention, given that the language is a very critical barrier, and translation is necessary in order to enter Korean market, I'm strongly recommend you to check out our previous Explore an Air webinar, Go Global with Google. And you can see that we are actually providing some service that could help you make international expansion easy, more easy around localization, especially in top quality translation from Google's own preferred partners. Please feel free to check out our Explore an Air websites. So that's a little bit of my summary. We have a couple of minutes for Q&A. Please feel free to submit your question using the chat box on the right-hand side on the YouTube interface. So now we have 2 questions. So the first one is, do you have any insights as to what factors influence Korean travelers when choosing their holiday destinations?
Right. I would say there are 2 notable themes for Korean travelers. One is eating, and another is healing. So eating, we call it mukbang. It's a Korean word, and food is actually a very important part of Korean culture, and we love eating. And we tend to associate traveling with trying out new cuisine in different countries. So, and this is why recently we're seeing a lot of travelers to Taiwan, because it's a lot of Koreans. There is rumor, I haven't been to Taiwan, but apparently there are a lot of delicious cuisine available in Taiwan, and that has actually impacted the rise of travelers to Taiwan recently. Another theme is healing. So a lot of Korean travelers seek to just rest and to find peace of mind. Um, and this is because it's we live in a very competitive society in Korea. There's very fierce competition every day, and we work very long hours in Korea. So we lead very stressful lives, and so we associate traveling with getting out of these daily lives and just taking rest and doing nothing. So healing is another important factor in influencing where to go for our vacation spots. We have a lot of reality shows based on this theme, so healing and eating. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Korean reality shows, but most of them are centered around eating or just doing nothing and healing and just traveling around. So I see another question there. How
Yeah,
do Korean travelers book their flight?
yeah.
Um, Flight tickets, well, most of it will be online. So because most of the flight booking will happen online through an app or through the website. So the flight tickets will be also purchased online. I would say it's pretty similar to the chart that we showed earlier, where I cannot remember the percentage, but majority of the payment will happen via credit card. So around 70% will be via credit card, and then 20% will be through mobile payment. If there's mobile payment integrated into the platform. Or we see a lot of credit card companies offering mobile payment apps. And a lot of Koreans are now making payments through these credit card apps.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Max. Any insights, please, on social media apps trends affecting the travel sector?
Hmm. Mm, any insights on social media app trends affecting the travel sector? Well, I would have to mention our competitor service, Instagram. So I'm seeing a lot of younger generation people on Instagram these days. Instagram is actually very one of the popular social media channels here. And it seems like a lot of people are searching for inspiration through Instagram and also searching for places to eat through Instagram. And that's how they actually make select their travel destinations.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question. Any recommended category for e-commerce advertisers who wants to export to Korean market as a start?
Um, so this is asking about the particular industry, I would think. I'm okay. I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but if it's a question asking about which industry an e-commerce player should export to in Korea, I think this is a question that I can't really answer at this moment. It really depends on what kind of products and what kind of differentiator the advertiser might have. But as I showed in my earliest presentation, most of the online shopping, if we talk about popular online shopping category in Korea, will be fashion and cosmetics. But that also means that there's a lot of fierce competition.
Okay, cool. So we have another question is for B2B searches, is Google or Naver the preferred choice for companies?
It's a tricky question to answer. For B2B searches, okay, I'm gonna be totally honest here. So for B2C, I would say Naver would be the preferred choice. But when it comes to B2B, I think Google's importance goes up more slightly. But both would be important in Korea, I would say. But if you have to go with one, I would think Naver, but just bear in mind that English targeting would be quite difficult.
Okay, thank you. And we have two more questions. Can you share the attributes, demographics of users of Naver and Google? We are B2B business, finding more traffic from Google.
Yes, and I would say this is because, so Naver, as I mentioned, Naver is a portal service. So if you go to Naver, you'll see so many contents flooding the website, and there's so many ads everywhere as well. And because of this, people will spend time on Naver to just spend their time during leisure, to read up on articles, to read up on the latest gossip, and to do some shopping and whatnot. Or Naver would be used to search for local information, whereas Google will be used more for businesses. So if you want to do more, if you need more professional, more business related content, that's where users will go for Google. And that's why I said if it's for B2B search, Google will be as important as Naver. But it's just that absolute number of users, Naver is the predominant platform in Korea. That's why I said if you had to choose one, it should be Naver. But if you are doing fine targeting and you're only looking for very business oriented demographic, then Google is I would say would be more effective.
Okay, so so we have questions. I would like to take this question as the last question. So is bookings from Google Flights growing year on year? Do you have any market share data for Google Flights vs Naver Flights?
I'm sorry, but I do not have data for this. Maybe this is something that we should take offline and get back to you at a later time.
Okay, cool. So so Rania, we're going to get back to you via email. So now actually this all we have time today. So if you do have any further questions for us after this session, you can always write us at exportonair@google.com, exportonair@google.com. Otherwise, we'll be posting the recording of this session in high definition in the Export On Air website. I would like to remind you that you could also look at all the past webinars that we have held since launching the webinar since 2016. And of course, if you attended this webinar and you register through the website, you're also in our mailing list. And we'll make sure to let you know about the future session by sending you a follow-up email and with the link as well to the website and to the recording as well. So also, we will send you a feedback, a survey feedback, because we would love to hear your thoughts of the presentation today. So finally, we would like to thanks again to our speaker, Lee, for your time to taking us through these very interesting insights. So thank you for joining the session and see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.